What do you guys say we address the elephant in the room on social media? Moon phase compatibility, fact or fiction? Hola my beautiful lotus flowers, welcome back or welcome to my channel. If you're into nerding out on everything astrology, spirituality, and self-transformation, this is the community for you. Today we're talking all about moon phase compatibility, a super huge trend that took off on social media recently, specifically TikTok. You may be familiar with it or maybe you're not, but if you do a quick moon phase compatibility trend search, you're guaranteed to find some video examples. Essentially, the trend blew up because it's a very quick, accessible way to identify if you and your partner are supposedly compatible based on where the moon phase was at the time that you were born. So for example, if you're somebody that was born with a new moon, whether you're compatible or not with somebody who was born during a full moon, and so on and so forth. So in today's video, I want to break down the reasons why this is either fact or fiction. We're going to talk about the history of moon phase compatibility and moon phase personality in astrology. Then we will actually talk about moon phase personality types, if you're not familiar with those. And then we'll finish off the video by talking about the most quote-unquote compatible moon phases in astrology. Let's start off by talking a bit more about the background behind the moon phases and their importance in astrology. First, I want to make sure that we know the difference between the moon phase you were born and your moon sign. I want to make sure these are not getting confused in this video because they are very different. So when we refer to the moon phase that you were born under, we're talking about the phase the moon was in at the time we were born. So you were either born under the new moon, the waxing crescent, the first quarter, the waxing gibbous, the full moon, the waning gibbous, the last quarter, or the dark moon. And overall, the phase that we were born under helps point us towards the broader tone and theme of our lives. Whereas your moon sign refers to the constellation the moon was moving through at our time of birth. So for example, my moon sign is Gemini, so that means that the moon was moving through the constellation Gemini at the time that I was born. And the moon signs tell us more about our inner emotional world. So again, they're very different. Now, as for a little history behind the moon phases, yes, moon phase personalities have been a legitimate part of astrological study for centuries, but were mainly brought to the modern world's attention by famous astrologer Dane Rudhyar, an astrologer that is accredited for bringing many ancient astrological studies to the attention of modern society. Moon phases not only tell us the overall theme of our lives and our personality, but they have also been largely connected to incarnation and the karmic phases that our soul encounters in our lifetime. This is because the moon itself is strongly connected to themes of rebirth. When we encounter a full moon, it's considered a time of release, whereas the new moon is associated with renewal, taking us through many cycles of rebirth every month. So in terms of the moon phase connection to our birth, the phase of the moon is almost like a direct analogy of our soul's life. Phases when the moon is changing from new to full, the waxing phases, will point at themes around growth and expansion, whereas when the moon is changing from full to dark, the waning phases, themes around release are more present. Here, I just covered a little bit more of the background of moon phases and what they mean in astrology and why they're studied as part of people's astrological personality, but I'm not covering the specifics of what each moon phase means and the energy behind each moon phase. So if you want to know more about the moon itself and what each phase means, refer to this video that I made in the past so you can learn more about the moon itself. But this video will not be specifically on the moon phases, but how the moon phases correlate to our personality. Now let's talk about moon phase personalities. Again, the phase you were born under will affect the overall tone of your personality and your life. Someone who was born under the new moon is thought to have a very different tone to their life than someone born under the full moon. So I'm going to go ahead and break down the 8 different moon phase personalities, and I'm just going to give a brief summary of each one. And just remember that the specifics of your birth chart are much more important to adding color to the tone of your life. When we talk about the moon phase personality, it's a overall vague theme in your life, and to get more specific, we would essentially dive deeper into the birth chart. But this short summary of your moon phase personality is not going to embody everything that you are. It's just to give you an idea. And if you're not sure what moon phase you were born under, if you actually go to astroseek.com and calculate your birth chart, which I'll leave a link in the description to that website, they will actually give you your moon phase of birth when you calculate your chart. So before you watch this, be sure that you go find that and come back and find your moon phase personality. Let's start with the new moon personality. The overall personality archetype of somebody who was born under the new moon phase is going to be connected to the full card in tarot, or can be compared to the energy of Aries in the zodiac. And the reason being that this phase revolves a lot around planting seeds, actually beginning new things and starting new things. And this is something that Aries is known for. When you look at the Fool card in the tarot, it represents somebody who is looking out at the journey ahead and all the possibilities ahead. So essentially, somebody who has a new moon personality is going to be someone who looks forward to fresh beginnings and isn't afraid of new starts. It's because of this that they probably look at life through a much more childlike lens than a lot of other people, and they probably live more instinctual as well. In saying that, they can be quite driven by their gut feelings, which can lead them to make decisions and take actions that are extremely authentic to who they are. But on the other hand, they may also be prone to impulsive action and may have a poor record for following through on what they start. But the general energy around this phase is vibrant, starry-eyed, spirited, and these people probably stand out or aim to stand out in some way. Second, we have the waxing crescent moon phase personality. This can be seen as the time where those seeds that we planted in the new moon start to turn into little sprouts. They start to just barely emerge from the earth. So very similar to the new moon phase, this person probably has a similar vibrant energy and they are not afraid to take on new pursuits in life. However, they may not have the reckless impulsivity that a new moon personality has. They have just a little bit more discernment and a bit more focus, because when you plant seeds, you're scattering seeds, planting them. There's not necessarily an order to that, but when a bud starts to grow, that seed is actually focused into an energy that has now come out of the earth and turned into a sprout. So the card that's often associated with this phase is the High Priestess, because this is something that the High Priestess represents. She represents the nourishment of the seeds, the nourishment of those pursuits in order for them to actually begin to become something. Someone born under this phase probably has that same desire and energy for new pursuits and ambition, but just with a greater ability to actually hone in on a particular pursuit and give those pursuits the attention they need to begin to turn into something. Next, we have the waxing first quarter phase personality. This phase can be thought of as the phase where that little sprout begins to turn into a full-grown plant and starts to really showcase what it's going to be or what it can become. And because of that, its roots have started to also take a firm position in the ground. Because this phase is associated with kind of beginning to see the first manifestation of what the seeds that were initially planted can become, it's associated with the Magician card in the tarot, because the Magician card shows somebody with all of the elements surrounding him, all of the tools necessary to create and manifest what he's trying to create and manifest. This is definitely symbolic for first quarter individuals' general determination to create their own roots and bring things into fruition by doing so, whatever that looks like for them. So there's definitely an element of sturdiness and fixation mixed with the same determined energy from the first two phases to actually make a goal tangible. The difference is that the first quarter phase brings about someone who is more naturally inclined to take the lead towards a pursuit and fulfill that pursuit no matter what that entails, sticking it out until the end. The previous two phases might have lacked focus, The new moon phase more so lacks focus than anything, but the waxing first quarter is where we really start to see somebody who is going to be able to focus, maybe focus too long on something and beat that goal into the ground, trying to make sure that it actually happens. So we see more of a groundedness in the personality of somebody born under this phase. Next, we have the waxing gibbous phase. This is a phase associated with the appearance of buds on that plant that we have been growing. And because of this, it's often associated with the Wheel of Fortune in tarot, because the Wheel of Fortune card represents abundance and represents starting to bear fruits or starting to actually reap the fortune of whatever you have sown. This is symbolic of a person that is preparing for the abundance of what they've planted, if you will. Taking the actions necessary to not only nourish their inner world, but taking the time to carefully plan and organize so they can move forward accordingly. Compared to the previous phases, we start to feel a much more mature energy in this person. This is probably someone who heavily values self-development, creative expression, and gaining knowledge, simply because they know that focusing in on these things is what's going to ultimately bear the fruit that they're trying to bring into fruition. If you're enjoying this video so far, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell so you don't miss future astrological and spiritual videos like this one, filled with so much more knowledge and, yeah. And awkward moments like that, because I always have random awkward moments. Leave a comment down below telling me which moon phase you were born under, and if this resonated, or even if you have a partner and you want to share the moon phases you were born under and whether they're compatible. I'd love to see it in the comments. Next, we have the full moon phase personality. The ultimate moon phase of fertility is considered the full moon because it's the time where everything, all that work that has culminated in the last phases has now officially become fruits of that labor. Quite literally, the plant will now have fruits, full-blown fruits growing on them, and we can actually start to see what we have been planting. The previous phases are a bit more blind. They don't really get to see those things. It's more of an energetic feeling or putting the energy behind what's going to become physical and tangible. But the full moon is when those things actually become tangible, and now we can begin to see the peak of the fruits of our labor happening. Because both the sun and the moon are illuminating each other in this phase, which is why the full moon is so bright, the sun and the moon tarot cards are both associated with this phase, and that plays a lot into the personality of someone born under this phase as well. Individuals born under the full moon are likely to live very prosperous, bountiful lives in some way. But many of these bountiful experiences will come through the pathway of personal relationships, because there's that sun and moon balance. There's kind of an essence of duality with people born under this phase. And that duality often comes with meeting other people who kind of contrast them and or illuminate them in some way. So there can be a theme in this person's life where relationships that illuminate their path in some way are vital to their growth and to their journey, and vital to who they become that lives this prosperous, bountiful life. Next, we have the disseminating, also known as the waning gibbous phase. Under this phase, the plants that have grown the fruits and grown the flowers are now beginning to drop and release the fruits, drop the petals of the flowers, and we're starting to see that we're moving. We got to a peak at the full moon, and we're just starting to pass that peak in this phase. So it's often associated with the star card in tarot because it's representative of this phase being where we actually share the fruits of our labor. So now that we have gotten to that peak and we have done the work and we have culminated something that we're happy with, now it's time for us to essentially share that with other people, or share it in service, or whatever way that fits into your life. Those born under this phase are often seen as mentors in some way, having this sort of calm, mature wisdom they've accumulated through all of life's cycles that they're able to actually share with others. Because of this sense of inner calm and wisdom they hold, these individuals are often quite present and enjoy living each moment fully. Quite the opposite of the first phases that tend to be very forward-facing and caught in lofty pursuits for the future. Those born under this phase can really remind us to slow down, relish life, and show us how to truly bear the fruits of life. Next, we have the waning last quarter moon phase. This phase can be seen as autumn of the moon phases, where those plants that had leaves and dropped their fruits, now the leaves are beginning to change color and preparing to fall and start anew. So the tarot card associated with this phase is often the Judgment card, and that's because it's representative of this phase being a time for deep self-reflection and really reflecting on what aligns most in your life. It's likely that people born under this phase have a theme in their lives around being in alignment with their own philosophy. There may be an ongoing search for this alignment, but it's also highly likely that they go through a dramatic, life-shifting event that forces them to make aligned decisions moving forward. Just like the leaves changing color and preparing to fall, these individuals often break free from any type of conformity at some point in their lives in order to begin living authentic and true to themselves. Lastly, we have the dark moon phase personality. This is the very last phase where those leaves actually fall and can be thought of energetically as the winter of the moon phases. It's where kind of we have a blank canvas again. All the plants are dying, the trees are barren, and it's a time of renewal and rebirth in that way. So we're preparing for that renewal and rebirth by experiencing these mini deaths through the seasons, and that's what it's symbolic of anyways. So because of that, the tarot card often associated with the dark moon is the Hermit, because this is a time to turn inward and be alone and really get to know yourself, be in that quiet space with yourself and really reflect on your inner world. So those born under this moon phase may encounter a lot of completions in their life or many cycles of death and rebirth. The energy around a person born under the dark moon is quite Plutonian, as those with strong Plutonian influence in their charts often experience many intense situations that lead to some sort of symbolic death and rebirth. So because of this, they're often natural loners with a select few that they become close to. And due to the general nature of their lives, oftentimes these individuals have a strong, silent wisdom to them, and they tend to see the bigger picture of life, almost being quite the visionary, if you will. They don't really get caught up in the everyday, mundane, material, day-to-day things that a lot of other people can get caught up in. They kind of have a way of expanding their view past that and not really being able to see why someone's worried that they got a bad haircut or something like that. They can kind of think it's silly because they just see so much more to that. Lastly, to finish off the video, let's talk about the most quote-unquote compatible moon phases. First, we have the new moon and full moon combination. So the new moon is somebody who's definitely more of an innocent dreamer, who kind of sees the world as their blank slate and is not afraid to go after those goals and start those new pursuits. Whereas somebody who is born under the full moon phase has kind of gone through those cycles already and kind of has that knowledge and that focus to be able to put into the dreams of the new moon person. So this causes a very good balance between the two. But of course, there can always be friction when we're looking at two different personalities, especially if they cause a balance. There can also be quite a contrast. So when we look at these two, there can be a disagreement between the way to go about things because there is a more childlike nature to the new moon person. But overall, this is the reason that these two may have a good compatibility scale according to their moon phase personalities. Next, we have the waxing crescent and waning gibbous combination. It's similar to the new moon and full moon personality vibe, but somebody who was born under the waxing crescent moon is somebody who is born in the waxing phases, right? So they're born in the middle of the waxing phases. These are the phases associated with building something, cultivating those seeds before they turn into something. So a lot of these people are dreamers, right? Then you have somebody who's born under the waning gibbous, which is in the middle of the waning phases before we get to the dark moon. These are the phases after we've culminated the fruits and we have actually reached success, and there's kind of more of a mature, calm wisdom and more of a groundedness to these phases typically. So when you have a waxing crescent person, somebody who's considered like another dreamer, and then you have a waning gibbous person, somebody who has been there, done that, they can create a great balance because you have a dreamer and a doer again, but they're not quite as high energy and sporadic as maybe someone with the new moon and someone who is full moon, which full moon people are more high energy than the rest of the waning phases. So with this one, both personalities do share kind of a calm and an ease in life, but they're both very dedicated to different types of growth, and the types of growth that they want can definitely balance each other out. But with that being said, the way that they can clash is, again, the waning gibbous person is probably a bit more calm and structured and collected. So there could be a frustration that sometimes happens with the waxing crescent person, who can be a bit more spontaneous and sporadic. Next, we have the waning crescent and the waxing gibbous combination, and these two can make a beautiful, like, transformational power couple combination. Both are focused on a self-development path and abundance. Both have a very abundant theme or abundant tone in their lives for different reasons. One is more focused on that self-development aspect, you know, creative thinking, learning, taking in that knowledge and really growing into who they want to be. Whereas the other is more focused on sharing and servicing with the fruits of the labor that they've worked so hard to create. And the combination of the two can create a beautiful, beautiful partnership, in my opinion. And they both have a bit more of a mature energy, if you will. Next, we have the first quarter and the third quarter combination. We have somebody who is associated with the Magician card in tarot, someone who actually is taking action and creating something of the seeds they've planted. And then you have somebody who is much more of a visionary type of person and much more of a reflective personality type. So I kind of see this as somewhat of a fire and water combination, but honestly, a lot of times the combination of fire and water does very well when it comes to romantic relationships, I've noticed, and that's just kind of the energetic vibe I get from this duo. But there's a beautiful balance because first quarter, it's much more focused on the outer world and the materialistic world and bringing something of that and growing that in some way, whereas the third quarter person is much more focused on the internal world and that self-reflection needed. That's going to domino effect and directly correlate with what you create in the outer world. So the two create a beautiful balance when it comes to that level of inner reflection, self-development, and manifesting what you want externally by focusing on your internal world as well. Overall, the answer to the question, is it fact or fiction, is moon phase personalities and compatibility are 100% rooted in astrological fact. It's been ancient astrological study, so it's not fiction. However, I want to reiterate the fact that this is a very simplified way to look at the tone of your life, to look at the way that you and somebody else, how your lives may interact and the values that you may share, but it is in no way a super detailed look into the birth chart or into your astrological personalities. And so therefore, it is not of the utmost importance, and it is not 100% going to tell you if somebody is your soulmate or your twin flame or whatever, but it can point at you two having a shared direction in your life. And based on the rest of the birth chart, to add color to that, then you may be onto something, but it's more so for fun in that aspect. However, there is 100% fact behind this trend. So do with that information what you will. Social media is also for fun. So as long as you know that it's just for fun and you're not taking it 110,000% seriously, then I say go for it, have fun, do your thing. But I hope you enjoyed this video. Again, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell, and leave a comment down below telling me your moon phase personality, or if you're with somebody and what their moon phase is as well. I'd love to know. And if you haven't watched these videos already, be sure you watch them. They'll help you so much more on your astrological and spiritual journey, especially if you enjoyed this one. But until I see you next time, thank you so much for being here. I appreciate you all more than you know, and I'll see you in the next video. Adios.